When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing myself liker to him, more rich in hope, featured like him of friends possessed, desiring this man's art and this man's scope was what I most enjoyed, content the least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, and then I think on thee, and then my soul, like to the lark at break of dawn, arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, and then I scorn to change my state with kings. That's a little Shakespeare, I thought, to break the ice. Thank you. Okay. Do you have questions you want to ask? Where I was born? Where I went to school? Is this okay? So you still get a close up and still hear me, huh? That was a little Shakespearean sonnet, in case you probably all know it. You probably all recite it every day. Do you have questions?
You're a legend. Many questions.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Okay. I was born in a little town in Pennsylvania called Turtle Creek. And it's about 22 miles from Pittsburgh. It was originally, years before, an Indian settlement called, let me think, I'll think of it in a minute. I usually know it too. I'll come back to that. Let me think. I'll have to think of it. I can't remember. But anyway, it meant creek which moves slow like turtle. That's how it got its name, Turtle Creek. It's not funny. I usually know it all, but now I guess I'm all flattered and flustered. That's what's going on, I get. It's not funny. It'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it. So I was born in Turtle Creek, whose name, Indian name, I can't remember, but and I went to Turtle Creek High School, and I made some pretty good grades then because nobody in my family had ever gone to college. My father started work as a nursery, in a nursery, and then got to work in a steel mill, which was not fun for a gardener anyway. He was there, and I decided it might be good to go to college, but we really didn't have the money for it in Turtle Creek. So I talked to the the administrator of the high school, Dr. Adelman, and I said, yeah, I'd like to maybe go to college. And he said, well, okay. He said, well, we don't have the money. Is there a possibility? He said, well, we could try to get you a scholarship. How are your grades? And I said, well, they're not bad, A's and B's. He said, well, you keep making those and we'll see that you can get you a scholarship. Tippawissipoo. That's Turtle Creek in Indian, in the old language. So I said, all right, so A's and B's, okay. So I decided, well, don't do anything half-heartedly, make A's. So I did. I was like the second person to make all A's with me. And then I talked to somebody who had told me about a possibility of going to Princeton. And I said, well, really? And it was one of the few people from Turtle Creek who was in Princeton and was looking, for possible new recruits. So I hitchhiked up to Princeton from Turtle Creek across the Pennsylvania Turnpike to spend the weekend there to find out. It's a beautiful campus. I don't know if you've ever been to Princeton, but it's one of the most beautiful 250-year-old universities. And I thought that was good, and then I found out, well, what you do is you take a college board exam and don't send them the results. You just take it so that you can become familiar with what you don't know and need to, freshen up on. And I thought, okay, boy, this is strange. I think it cost $40, and not to send the results was kind of a waste, I thought. But I took it, and I found that I was kind of weak in a couple of things like economics and something else. But I took the exam and sent the results to Princeton, and I will never forget getting a letter from them back, early in May saying, congratulations, you've been accepted into the class of Princeton, class of 1954, with a full tuition scholarship and a job in the dining halls. And if you need an extra loan for anything, let us know. I said, I can't believe this university is so gracious. Because, none of us had ever gone. So I did. I loved Princeton, and I worked in the dining halls and had to work like crazy to keep that scholarship grade level so I could afford it, Anyway, so I did that, but I'll tell you, this is kind of an interesting thing. Tell me if I'm going on, but one of the things that I had started in high school was acting, and every class would have a yearly play, and I did 1 or 2 or 3 of those, and I enjoyed it, the acting, and I thought, well, that's great. So when I got into Princeton, I forgot about that because you don't want to waste an education just doing acting, comedy or anything, And but while I was there, they had a summer theater called University Players, and I don't think they paid us anything, or a little bit, mostly just food and board. And so I started acting there, and at Princeton, one of our professors in graduate school was Albert Einstein, and he came to see our plays. And one of the plays early in my junior year was The Tempest. I was playing Caliban in that. And he came to see it in a little tiny theater with only 200 people. And he came backstage, so I had a chance to go and talk to him. I mean, shake his hand, talk to him, and he was so sweet. We called him the Booter, because he would walk around the campus humming and singing to himself and just having a great time in his mind, I guess. So, but we had a chance to talk, and he said, what do you plan to do when you graduate? I was a junior. And I said, oh, I don't know, probably go to law school, become an attorney. And he said, do you like acting? And I said, oh, gee, I do love it, it's my passion. And he said, I'll never forget it, he said, well, do you know, you can have a beautiful life if you can find a way to do what it is you enjoy doing. Which really touched me. It still does when I think of it, That's from Albert Einstein. You can't refute that type of wisdom, right? So I thought about it. So when I graduated, I had a fellowship to Harvard Law School, but I was also in New York, and I started acting in the active studio. I started studying with a great teacher named Lee Strasberg. And I decided I had to make a decision, and my decision was I might as well go into the theater because that's where my heart is anyway, so maybe it'll work out. So I started, I kept acting and auditioned. I got into a Broadway play, Sweet Bird of Youth, with Paul Newman, Tennessee Williams. And that was before, it was a year after I got out of college and the year before I was drafted into the Navy. So anyway, that's how I got into acting. I went into the Navy as a draftee, stationed in Panama. Again, I was very lucky because I wasn't assigned to a ship. I was assigned to the diplomatic office in Panama, which was wonderful because they also had a local theater group that I could do all my acting in again. So I was acting there while I was still in the Navy, but I was in Panama. Anyway, so that's how I got started. When I came out, I came back and went to New York and started other plays. And then, as you may know, I was sought after. Some talent agent saw me and a producer to come out here to do California. And I did my first series, 87th Precinct, a detective series. I played detective third grade Burt Lang. And that was the first of my 6 television series that I had done. You may know some. Planet of the Apes was one of the last ones. You were in it, I think. You've seen it, right? So I did that, and that's how a summation. I'm sorry if I went on too long and bored you. Forgive me. But that's my history, basically. Do you have some questions that I'll try to answer?
Yes. Going back to Planet of the Apes, are there any memorable things that happened with Roddy or Booth Coleman or your co-star or anybody who was starring the series? Anything that stuck into your mind?
Well, let's see. I enjoyed Roddy, and he was a very, very sweet guy, I must say. Boy, he had to come like 3 hours early. I don't know how long it took you to do makeup, if that's makeup. I don't know if it's real.
Almost the same.
But he had to come in every morning at like 4 o'clock or 4:30 to get into makeup, to put all that makeup in the nose and the hair and everything. And it was exhausting because we would shoot all day long, even after the sun went down, because mostly we were outside. We would go into a studio and finish a thing. And then finally, after about 3 or 4 shows like that, he had to take off a couple of weeks to get his strength back because it was exhausting for him. I didn't have any makeup at all or anything, so it was an easier snap like that. It's a very good question. I wish I could think of some funny things. We had a lot of occasion for things to happen, but I don't remember anything too specific, except the story that I just told you there. Yeah, that's about it. Any other question? Come on. Come on, ask me something. How about the girls? Anyway, that's a summation of my history, basically. You've probably seen some of my series, 87 Precinct, Wendy and Me with Connie Stevens, Gene Arthur show, Land of the Lost, which was a daytime children's show. You remember that? And then Garrison's Gorillas was a war series that I enjoyed really doing. Planet of the Apes, and then about half a dozen or more movies. Probably a dozen more movies since then. Yes?
I was just wondering what your favorite role you ever done was.
That's an excellent question, because I never really stopped to think of what would be my favorite one. I loved the parts in some of the comedy plays that I did. I loved, being able to say a line correctly so that the audience would get some laugh out of it, without fouling it up. As far as this series goes, I would say, it's a good question. I think probably 87 Precinct, I was the younger of the 4 actors, so I learned a lot from them. And I guess it would be Garrison's Gorillas. It was about the Second World War. I played Garrison, and I had 4 convicts who we were my team fighting the Nazis during the Second World War. So there's a lot of action in it. Some very, very nicely well-written scenes. Planet of the Apes was very exhausting, I think the stories, I remember after about 3 months shooting it, I got to talk to the producers and said, you know, we're falling into a rut. Like one of us gets captured by the apes and the other two rescue him, Roddy McDowell and Jim Naughton. I said, it's science fiction. Apes do not really talk English. They don't wear guns, you know. We're not using our imagination. So they said, yeah, maybe you're right. So they started changing some of the stories so that we could use some of the more human aspects of a situation to make it a little bit more interesting.
Did you have a favorite episode?
A favorite episode on the Planet of the Apes? That's another good question because I've worked so hard on every one. It's such a good question. I can't think of my favorite episode. I like them all. I remember there was one where I was kind of, there was an abandoned ape, or a mother died, and there was had a little baby ape, so I took care of it for a while. I kind of liked that paternal instinctive drive that I was working with. Anything else? How long have I been talking? A long time.
That's okay.
Did you fall asleep?
I don't know if you answered this.
You have any questions?
But over your career, how come things, did you see a lot of change in the networks or the way things are done?
Oh, they're good. Come on in. We're just being taped here. Yeah, you,
I'm sorry.
You
Hi.
come in. Leave the guy out.
How are you? I don't really know what the room is, what's happening.
I'm boring them with a biography of my history with Ron Harper.
Continue.
You said, what was that? The question was?
How did the industry change over your career when you first got in NASCAR?
That's an excellent question because for all the years that I did this series, basically everything was basically the same. I think it became a little bit more risque. I did Wendy and Me with Connie Stevens, and that was a domestic comedy, and there was nothing really dirty about it or shady about it. And I see some of the shows today, and I think they go a little bit further than we used to do back in the other days, because you got to keep it clean. And I believe in that too. Does the girls who just come in have a question?
Oh, there's only one girl. I do not. You're from the Planet of the Apes? That's amazing. I'm sorry. I feel like I walked into the wrong room. But I'm totally into the movie, and this is great. So we're sitting down and listening.
I think you came into the right room for me.
What character did you play? I'm sorry.
I played, what was my name? I played the lead actor in Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you've kept up with the franchise and if you've
What
kept
was
up
that?
with
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Alan Virdon.
Alan Virdon.
Yep.
Colonel Alan Virdon was my character's name. He's one of my buddies, Isn't he looking good too? Yeah. He's got a haircut and everything.
Sorry.
Wearing clothes.
I was wondering if you've kept up with the franchise, the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Yes, I watch it all the time. I watch all the series. I mean, all the movies that come out since then.
Do you like the new movies?
Yeah, some of them are. Some of them are okay. Some of them are interesting. I remember the one about vaguely the world in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that called? Well, they took over the
Dawn of the Planet
world,
of the Apes.
right? Dawn of Planet of the Apes. I thought that was an interesting premise because, as I just said, when I talked to the producers, one of us gets captured and the others say, it's more imaginative. This is not a real situation, so use your imagination. And again, I think they could still be more imaginative. And so I remember what we were just talking about, where they were ruling the continent, or where apes were in charge of the government and all, right?
Mhm.
That was okay. That was a good, but as long as you're going to go for a fictitious science fiction, use your imagination. That's why I feel. Anything else?
In the series, you have many stuntmen, or you play risky scenes?
Say it again.
Oh, my English is very
I
poor.
know, but I'll listen. Go.
In the series, you have a stuntman who plays your role, or you play some risky scenes.
Oh, you do a double. Do I use
Yes,
a
double,
double?
yes,
Yes. Obviously, it's required. And it's not because they're so concerned about my health, it's because the production of the show would be expensive if they had to stop and delay production while I got better or they found another actor to do the part, you know? So I always had a double for action shows, you know, like the Apes and Garrison and all. And basically, it wasn't really a humanity question, it was a question of economics. We don't, watch Harper, don't let me, I think he's got a cold. Don't get near him, you know, or something. We can't afford to lose him because I had to be working every day. Good question.
But it's not a comfortable role. You are so dirty every day.
A problem of what?
No, I said it's not a very clean character because you are dirty all the time with dust.
Oh yeah, oh that, yeah. Oh yeah, anything that was not dangerous, you know, I would have to stop if I remember one episode when I was riding a horse, which I was able to do. But there was, then the horse, let's see, what was the story? I wanted to be not recognizable by the apes, so the script had a scene where I fell off the horse into a puddle of mud to disguise myself. You know? So, in response to your question, you know, I managed to fall off, or a stuntman maybe fell off, but then I had to stand there while they plastered me with mud, my face and everything, so they can cover it, so the apes don't really recognize me right off. Stuff like that, but dangerous scenes, like, you know, having a horse fall with a rider on it, they'd never let me do that because it might hurt a leg. You know. Swimming, I think there was one in the water. That didn't, I could swim, but that's it. That was all right. I was underwater, that's right. I was doing something underwater. I remember I had to learn it. I mean, I had to go down. Because I'm trying to think of the director's name, Richard something. I was playing one of the fishermen for the Planet of the Apes. It's a native, and I had on, you know, this fur thing with a spear and everything, and I was going to go out and spear some fish for us to eat, and so the director said, "Okay, let's go into the water." We were shooting off the coast in the ocean, and it was freezing cold. It was in the middle of January or something. So I'm going out, and he said, "Come on, go on a little bit further." So I'm working out, and I'm up past my knees. He said, "A little bit further, Brian." And I go out, and I'm up to my waist, and he said, what do you want me to go under for? You know, this is close as I, and he said, "I just want to see if you'd listen to me." You know, some directors are like that, to see if you're paying attention. Yeah, I'm listening to you, and I think it's crazy. But I remember because then I had to dive underwater, which would go into the studio. Or did they started to shoot me at least going under the water, and in the studio they had me underwater holding my breath with my spear and spearing a fish, and then coming out of the water with it on my spear, so I could see it. It was physically a very exhausting role. You know? And if it was short, for an hour show, several times. Often it would be, okay, run, okay, now they're chasing you, so I want you to start running. Okay, run some more, keep running. We're looking for 2 minutes. Okay, keep running. Jesus, this is using up time to pull our for an hour. Anything else?
You never has a temptation of disguise like an ape?
What you say, Mike?
Do you never has the temptation of disguise yourself like an ape?
Me?
Yeah.
Like an ape?
No, never, no.
No. I was the human that they could see, It took them 3 hours to put on the. How long did it take you to do?
This one's
Huh?
around 3 hours, but this one's a pull.
Oh, it is. You just put it on?
Yeah.
Include everything?
Yes.
Oh, that's why your mouth isn't.
Yeah.
It's not moving.
But these are the.
Mine's different.
Yours is different because your mouth moves.
Yeah, but he did it. I don't know how
He
to do
did it, huh?
Yeah.
This is a separate
Yeah, I
piece,
think-
right?
Yeah, separate pieces, glued, piece by piece.
Yeah. That happened a lot on the series, that speaking too much or too fast or something, and it would come loose. And they'd have to stop and glue it back on, which they hated to waste the time to do it. What is that? Sounds like an elephant, doesn't it? Isn't that funny? It was underneath, wasn't it? So, okay, what is this for, this interview? For what?
To hear you talk.
What? Just
To hear you talk.
To hear me talk. A lot of people would object to that. They don't want to talk.
We paid money to.
Oh, yeah. Are you going to make a disc of it or something?
I think we'll host it online.
What?
We'll host it online.
Oh, you will? Will you let me know so I can
That's good.
check it out and see?
That's cool.
Yeah? Do you all want to contribute something and say, how great you think that my part was or something?
Of course.
Yeah. All right then. That's all.
Real quick, I was just wondering, what was it like working with, learning from Lee Strasberg?
Oh, you must know actors. Huh?
I just yeah.
Well, he was an excellent teacher, and I was just out of college, from Princeton, and I had heard that he was the best acting teacher in New York. He was teaching everybody from Marlon Brando to Jimmy Dean and a lot of people. And so you had to have an interview with him, and he had an apartment up on Park Avenue by Central Park. I remember going in to his apartment and talking to him, telling him, why do you want to be an actor? I said, well, I'm interested, I've always liked it. Acted in high school, acted in college, and I thought I'd like to try it out before I go in and I'm going to be drafted, etc. And he said, all right, come on, you can try. So he let me come into his class. It was twice a week. One day would be acting exercises that you do things like pantomime, or different accent, or with nothing. And then the other day would be when you do a scene. The two actors would do a scene, and then he would get some comments from the group, but mostly he would analyze it as a teacher on what was. And I'll always remember the first time I appeared. I think I was doing a monologue. I was standing up there alone, trying to feel the wind, and the sun, and doing something. And so when I finished, then he just talked to the class, and he said, "The class, pay attention. This is exactly what I'm trying not to teach." And he was right. I mean, he says he was a very blunt guy, because I was indicating everything and not really feeling this stuff, I mean, it shocked me so much I had to laugh. I said, God, I did totally wrong. And he was right. I studied with him for probably almost 2 years, off and on, to make it the acting realistic, not indicative, not indicating acting, but feeling it so that they can feel it. You know? He was an excellent teacher. Did you study with him? No. He's long gone now. And actually, you know, I did after about 6 or 8 months, I remember doing a scene or something, and he said, he's learning. Well, if that's all, then I wish you all a Merry Christmas for next year. And thank you all for showing up, and thank you for being fans, agents, or fans, fans of Garrison. No, apes. Ape fans. You look great. And you nice looking apes too.